microphone closer to my pedal board. Oh, that is a lot of reverb. Yeah, it's an insane amount of reverb. Well, hope you guys all had a great week. Lucy, why don't you open us up with a word of prayer?
Father God, thank you so much for this great day that we can all be together to start our class together. Amen.
Amen. All right.
Yeah, why are you
That's a good question. Hello. There you go. That's better. All right. Let's get to worshiping.
He bore our griefs, He took our sorrows, He was pierced for our transgressions, He was bruised for our iniquities. Behold the Lamb of God, who will save our soul. Holy, hallelujah, praise the Lord Yeshua, He is the holy, risen Son of God, He's come to save all of us. Oppressed, He was afflicted, He laid down His life to become our sacrifice. Behold the Lamb of God, who will save our soul. Holy, hallelujah, praise the Lord Yeshua, He is the holy, risen Son of God, who's come to save all of us. Messiah has come and rose again. He paid it all. The holy Lamb, by His blood will rise, and by His stripes we have eternal life. Holy, hallelujah, praise the Lord Yeshua, He is the holy, risen Son of God, who's come to save all of us. He is the holy, risen Son of God, who's come to save all of us. To the holy place, past the brazen altar, Lord, I want to see your face. Pass me by the crowds of people the priests who sing your praise. I hunger and thirst for your righteousness, and it's only found in one place. Take me into the holy of holies. Take me in by the blood of the Lamb. Take me into the holy of holies. Take the coal, cleanse my lips, here I am. Take the coal, cleanse my lips, here I am. Take me past the outer court, into the holy place, past the brazen altar, Lord, I want to see your face. Pass me by the crowds of people, the priests who sing your praise. I hunger and thirst for your righteousness, and it's only found in one place. Take me into the holy of holies. Take me in by the blood of the Lamb. Take me into the holy of holies. Take the cool, cleanse my lips, here I am. Take the cool, cleanse my lips, here I am. Take me into the holy of holies. Take me in by the blood of the Lamb. Take me into the holy of holies. Take the cool, cleanse my lips, here I am. Take the cool, cleanse my lips, here I am. Take the cool, cleanse my lips, here I am.
Thank you, Lord, for allowing us to come before you and worship you. Please bless this lesson that we're about to have. Lord, bless the service. Lord, help us to just rest in you, and Lord, and find rest in our Shabbat, Lord. In Yeshua's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, guys. Shabbat shalom, everyone. Good morning. Hope everybody had a blessed week, but ultimately it's over, and we are now on Shabbat. So that's always nice. We made it! Hooray! Hooray! There are some weeks where you're like, just get me to Shabbat. When I say just get me to Shabbat. We're going to continue as we meander around in apologetics. We've covered really only 2 points. We're really in the beginning of the third point. We talked about there is existence of truth, and then obviously the opposite of true is not true or false, right? On or not on. Those of you who are engineering or computer science or IT nerds, on and off, right? It's the switch is on or switch is off, digital, discrete, whatever. 40 years ago, I learned that stuff. Anyway, one thing I found interesting, because what we're in the middle of now is the 3 arguments for existence of God, right? And I know it's been a couple of weeks since we talked about this, so you probably really don't remember, and that's okay. That's okay. And so I was kind of fooling around. I'm preparing a lesson, a sermon, and I'm covering 1 John 4, 1 through 4, the idea of testing the spirit, right? I really feel recently with everything that's been going on and all the things we're seeing and, believers, preachers and stuff like that, all these different commentaries, I've really been digging into that. And what I found interesting in that was, the point of understanding who God is, right? And if you can't test the spirit if you don't know the spirit, right? It's like I always use the example of I work in banking, and for many years they would send bankers to the Fed to study and learn about counterfeit. And for that whole 2-week period, do you think they studied the fake stuff or the real stuff? The real stuff. Because if you know what's real, then you can figure out what's fake. The fake stuff changes all the time. So in the same thing for us, it's our requirement to test the faith. In that, we have to understand what we believe and we can build a logical argument. almost like threads. They're so thin. Well, how does that work? If light travels in a straight line, how can I bend fiber around a corner and rotate the light around a corner? Well, it's the nature of the glass and so forth, that it's actually still traveling in a straight line. It's just traveling like this instead of this way. It's going back and forth as it goes around. So that's what I mean by the idea of it's unobservable. Some historical event is unobservable, but we realize that from today, the way nature acts today will be the same as it. I know this is kind of dry. We're going to move forward. Don't worry. It doesn't get much more exciting, but it'll get a little more exciting. The idea of the anthropic principle. God, these are some really bad words here. Let me get to the real one I want to talk about. It's called irreducible complexity. Does anybody ever heard that term before? Irreducible complexity? Has anybody ever heard that before? What does it mean? You remember the word? Okay. Does anybody remember what irreducible complexity means? Even my group in the back row there. Anybody remember what irreducible complexity means? Yeah, and it's still being something, right? So I'm going to use a really old reference. But anybody seen what a mouse trap? You remember a mouse trap? Piece of wood, some metal, has a spring, right? So picture a mouse trap in your mind for a moment. Picture a mouse trap in your mind for a moment. Picture all the parts of the mouse trap, right? All right. What part can you remove from that mouse trap and it still be a mouse trap? Cheese, okay. So the what do you call it? The reward or whatever, the bait. Thank you. Words escape me. I like peanut butter. Actually, one time I had a really smart mouse in my ceiling. Where I grew up, my room was underground, so the mouse would be when they got in. So it kept eating the bait and leaving the trap unsprung. So I twist tied a Hershey Kiss to it. So as it was pulling the Hershey Kiss off it. No. Anyway, so that's online too. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe that's my problem. Anyway, what part of the mouse trap, other than the bait, can you remove and it still be a mouse trap if you think about it? Can you remove the spring? Why not? How's it going to smack, right? What else? What else is there? There's a little metal arm that holds the spring in place, right? The trigger. Can you remove the trigger? Then how's it going to do this? For those of you online, Katie's doing the universal snapping your neck with the mousetrap motion. You what? You can remove the mouse. We're hoping to remove the mouse. Well, you have the trap. How about the little piece of wood that it all sits on? It's bolted to. Can you remove that? No, I'm not talking about replacing it. I'm saying remove it and still be a mousetrap. So that's what irreducible complexity is. It's saying, can you think about your eyeball for a second? Ew, gross. What part of the eye can be removed and it still be an eyeball? But there's actually a purpose for the color too, as it filters the light. So the idea of irreducible complexity. The reason I bring that up is that's one of the main arguments against natural process. Because if it's saying natural selection, it proves over time that the best part of the DNA, the best part of the thing, keeps evolving over time to get better and better. How did blind, eyeless creatures know they needed eyes? You know what I mean? So no, you look at me confused. I'm confused too. If the eye evolved over time, what was it before it was an eye? And how did it know that by making changes and adding an iris and adding a muscle and putting the optic nerve and all, how did natural selection know that eyeballs were necessary? It doesn't make sense. It's like you wouldn't know, right? Now, granted, you have certain creatures that are in the dark that don't have, they were evolved to live in, they were micro-evolved to live in their environment in such a way that they can, and then again, if you take psychology classes, they were, back when I took them in high school, I don't even think about how long ago that was. They had done an experiment, I think, with a kitten. It raised it in its litter box or its whatever had vertical stripes, and another one had horizontal stripes, and then the way the eyes were formed from a kitten to adulthood were different based on the fact that the environment, the stripes of the box, changed the vision patterns because the black and I don't know. But I mean, there's microevolution based on those types of things, right? But the macro, the idea, how did the eye know Or what is it? If the mousetrap doesn't have a spring, what is it? It's a pile of garbage. Yeah, it's a piece of wood with some metal, right? That's about the extent of it, right? So that's where we talk about cause. So we're going to dig a little more deeper into cause here. Science is a search for causes, right? And again, there are two types of causes: natural and intelligent. Atheists and naturalist scientists rule out intelligent causes before they look at the evidence. Universe can only be the product of blind natural law. So they remove the creator out of the equation. How many people have played, well, we'll use your example, soccer, right? What happens if I make a soccer field, right? And I say, I'm going to go against, so it's going to be me against all of you. I'm going to take all of you on in soccer. I feel that confident in my ability to play soccer, all right? Every one of you against me, right? So we start at the 50-yard line and I'm the only one that has a goal. Do I win? Maybe dumb luck lets me kick the ball into the goal, but you guys don't have a goal, so you can never score. So at worst, it's a tie. That's what their argument does. That sounds silly, but that's what the argument proves. It's saying, hey, I got to remove this creator out of the equation so then I can prove it's only natural law. It can only be natural selection. It's like removing part of the equation and then saying, well, I'm never going to solve it. Of course not, because you don't have all the parts, right? Playing football in the middle of the field. Nobody ever scores. There's no end zone, right? And that's what the idea of science, by removing the concept or even the hope of a creator, right? So then, why can I never remember his name? Finally, before he died, Stephen Hawking, before he died, he finally says, yes, there had to be something that started. And so he said, carbon, everything that's made in the universe, base compound is carbon. So carbon is God. There was a carbon molecule that predated everything else, and through natural selection over time, it slowly became what we have here as a universe. So carbon is God. That's more likely, and that makes more sense to some people than the concept of a creator, right? You bake, right? You're a baker. Could you make a cake? Well, I shouldn't. You can now. That's stupid. I was going to say, can you make a cake without flour? But you can. Without any kind of flour type. So there's no gluten-free flour, no flour at all. You just have icing and eggs and sugar. Can you make a cake out of that? Yeah. Binding agent, some sort of protein, some sort of wheat. You made cookies without flour. You made them with bananas or something, didn't you? Yeah. Anyway, but that's the idea. Again, it's the whole concept of, if I remove a key ingredient of something, then it's like going out for a steak meal and there's no steak. I remember one time, very long time ago, when I ate fast food, I was a teenager. We went into an Arby's. What's the one thing that Arby's sells? Horsey sauce, yeah. What do you put the horsey sauce on? Roast beef. We went into an Arby's that had run out of roast beef. It's like, are you still in Arby's? Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. So that was like 40 years ago. That was like 40 years ago, 35 years ago. But anyway, so the idea being that if you remove some of the key ingredients, is something still something? If something's still something, then if you remove one of its key components, it's still not that thing. That's what irreducible complexity. That's the idea of intelligent design. That we started with a base point. Not saying that God didn't create within us the DNA and the ability to transform based on our environment. Like when I moved from Maryland, which isn't that far away in the ecosystems of the United States, to Charlotte, I didn't have allergies there. I have allergies here. So my body was reacting to the environment. What? Yeah, it is. We interacted differently with my body. So the idea that God created us with the proper components in order to interact in our environment, right? If a theistic God exists, this presupposition cannot be true, right? So the idea that if the atheists are right. An intelligent design cannot exist. That was weird, just randomly lost balance. If a creator can't exist, right, then theistic God can't exist. Because then there's no reason for a creator, for a begin. Because again, there's possible for truth, and whatever is not true is what? Not true, right? False. And two opposite opinions can't be both right in the same way at the same time. There either is a God or there is not a God. That is either on or off. Discrete digital signal. On or off. All right, so that's really the science of, so we have the cosmological argument basically states that everything has a cause. That's the study of science. So if atheists, naturalists, do not believe that there is a creator, then they are, in a lot of ways, why are they like blinking? Is there some sort of short in them? Anyway, it's distracting me in the corner of my eye. It's just that one strand. It's distracting me. And as you can tell, I'm easily distracted in life. It's like, anyway, if they believe, then you have to, what you would have to say is nothing caused something to produce something out of nothing, right? And that's not scientific. The scientific is to look for cause, and so cause and effect. If there's nothing that could have caused something to begin, then how did it begin? It's a non-scientific viewpoint by the scientists, which I find ironic. Next one, cosmological design. The major premise of cosmology, cosmological design, is every event has a cause. That's what we talked about. I'm sorry, I didn't move on. Brain's not working. I had a lot of meetings this week. Brain's not working this morning. Major premise of it's a principle of causality. Every event has a cause. Nothing cannot produce something. And again, we're not going to go too deep into this, but this is sort of the idea of surge, minor premises. The universe had a beginning. Second law of thermodynamics. I'm sorry, I don't want to give anybody fits about that who studied that in college, right? So the universe is not eternal. The universe is expanding. Radiation afterglow, the idea that the Big Bang. There's some believers. I happen to be one of them. My personal opinion is that the Big Bang really did happen, but it was caused by God. It wasn't just something randomly happened. We don't know when it says in the beginning God created heaven and earth what God's voice sounded like. It could have been He created, spoken into being, and because there is evidence of radiation and galaxy C things spreading out as the galaxy expands. Yeah, like if you drop a stone in the water and you see the rippling effect and how it affects out. That's what's happening in the universe. There's studies. That's why they're sending probes out into space, because the idea is that they're seeing that the cosmos is actually expanding, and so that would be like God created so what I'm trying to say is there's proof that something had an origin in a single point in time and expanded outward from that one point. Now that is God spoke it into existence. If you want to call it Big Bang, fine. I'm okay with that. I don't have any feelings one way or the other. But we know that it has a discrete beginning, in the beginning, which means God was outside of the beginning. He was there before the beginning, right? That's what the case. Most people say, well, who created God then? Nobody. God's eternal. Anyway. And then also Einstein's general relativity, not infinite number of days before today. Infinite means no end, right? So the idea that there's no infinite point before time, before us today. There is a discrete amount of time that occurred before we were sitting here today being bored out of our minds in youth class learning about science. So those are two major premises. So if the universe had a beginning, then it must have a beginner, right? So it had to start some way. There had to be a discrete beginning because there is no infinite time before that. The universe is not eternal. Nope, not going to go into that physics conversation. We're just going to keep it at that in our youth class today. So the universe had a beginning, then it must have a beginner. No one created something out of nothing is an atheistic view. Someone who doesn't believe that there could have been a designer. Someone created something out of nothing is a theistic viewpoint, which seems most reasonable. I'm not thinking of any answers, just something to ponder. What sounds more reasonable? Again, if Katie, which she has, were to come in with a couple dozen cupcakes because she couldn't sleep the night before that were absolutely delicious, mind you, but Katie wasn't in here. There was just a group of cupcakes sitting on the table, and Katie leaves to go do something, and someone walks in, and I go, wow, the universe created cupcakes for me. No, there had to be somebody who created the cupcakes. These didn't appear out of nowhere, although that would be awesome. It'd be better if they were donuts, but I mean, cupcakes are second best. That would be awesome. Anyway, sorry. Anyway, again, think about reasonability, right? The whole idea of being reasonable. Next one, we're going to go on. I'm going to get through some of this today. So second point, a 3-point argument. Every design has a designer. Universe and life is highly complex. Therefore, the universe and life has a designer. We talk about observational or repeatable science, and then historical science, which is unrepeatable, forensic. I don't know why they're so small comparatively. I have no idea. I wanted to see if you guys squinting, because then I could tell your parents you'd better take you to the eye doctor. You talk to him now. You're not no longer my deal. That's not my deal anymore. Anyway, so let's take a look at observation or historic. So observational basically says repeatable observation and measurement followed by analysis, hypothesis building, and testing. It is essential to note that these activities can only be done in the present. You can only do these things in the present. So again, your scientific experiments you have in class, those things are done, organized in those moments with what they believe to be a prescribed result, except when you're Gary and you do weird things with, dropping sodium in water and let it blow up the ceiling. Anyway, although the reaction were repeatable. Anyway, forensic is historic, unobservable, unrepeatable events of the past. The distance past is neither observable nor repeatable, so scientists must make multiple assumptions about past events. I assume Katie was born. It happened in the past. I wasn't there. But the fact that she's sitting here today tells me that a historical event occurred in the past, and Katie is now here. That's really what it's talking about, forensics. Historical things. We assume it passed. All right, so I happened upon, at the beach, a sandcastle. I would assume what? Someone created it. I wasn't there to see him do it, but I've been going to the beach for 51 years of my life, and I've never seen the ocean spit out a sandcastle. Yeah, it's usually the other way around, right? Of course it is. Thank you. I know, I forgot to look at it. I will.
I sent you another slide.
Hey, I send you guys stuff on Remind all the time, and nobody replies unless I ask you to reply. Sometimes just the acknowledgement, yeah. I will absolutely look at it. We'll take a look at that. Now you're giving me homework.
You're welcome.
You're giving me homework. Anyway, so we assume that this is what? Observational or historical and forensic? Yeah, because it's got to be historical forensic. Even though we didn't see it happen, we assume that Isaac was on the beach with his little shovel and bucket, right? Packing his sand, making a little sand castle, very proud of it until the ocean came and took it away. Poor thing, right? What about stalagmites in tights? Observational? I never remember which ones goes up, which ones goes down. Is it stalactite from the top and stalagmites from the bottom? Oh, tight to the top, okay. Is this observational or historic? Roy, what do you think? You're second guessing yourself.
Would it not be historical? Or no? Or would it be both?
Give me an answer, Roy. Come on, man. Have a position.
I need to read both.
Okay.
Observation and measurement by analysis.
We've done in the present. Can you stand in Roy Caverns and look at the stalagmites and tights? So what does that make it? Observational.
No, but I thought you mean when it's being made.
It's being made current present tense. Yeah, in history it was made as well, right? So I can go downtown and look at a building, corporate center where I work. I wasn't there when they built it, but I see it's still there. And when they're making changes inside of it, I can still observe that it's being built. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I understand in this scenario, some years ago as it gets closer to the ceiling, but the idea is that you can observe it in the present tense. You can go watch stalactites, if you have that kind of time, like watching grass grow. You can watch stalagmites and tights being made, right? Has anybody ever been to the place that had stalagmites, stalactites, like Luray Caverns or Carlsbad Cavern? Yeah, it's in California, I think, right? Yeah. Yeah. So you can observe time. You can observe it real time. Anyway. Well, the idea that so I hear what you're saying, Alex. Could it be both? Sure. The ones that are already done, maybe, that don't have water dripping out of them or whatever, we could say that those were, because but really it's current, it's present tense. You're watching them being formed at that moment in time. Not really. That's what I'm saying. You'd have to be there a while. But you see but you could put a time lapse camera on it, and every 2 minutes take a picture. Yeah, I'm sure you could. I'm sure you go on YouTube or something or whatever, and how to spell, something like that, right? So the idea that those are the two basic things. We either have observational things I can do in the present tense, or forensic. Creation of the earth. Which one do you think that is? You're too old to be answering, Alex. Try to be polite by doing this, but I'll call you out. There you go. Forensic. Because the creation occurred at a moment in time in history, whether you believe in old earth, young earth, whatever, right? But it occurred in time, at a point in time. But there's still some empirical, because things are changing. Grass is growing, trees are growing. You can watch those things. Anybody do the science experiment with the lima bean in the cup and you're watching it, Sure. Yeah. All those things, so to the point where there are certain things you can observe, but the creation moment itself is forensic, is historic. All right. So if there's only natural law cannot produce specified and complex systems like books, computers, sculptures, and such, right? So the idea that I can't just, again, so using Katie's example, I can't just throw a bunch of ingredients on a table and have it form a cake over time. Things would get moldy and spoil, the milk would spoil, whatever, right, if you're using it. So it can't create complex systems through natural selection. There has to be a designer. The principle of uniformity, however nature has acted in the past, it's pretty much how we expect it to act in the future. I already read Ecclesiastes 1:9, right? We have this guy, Richard Dawkins. Ironically, he's one of the biggest proponents of atheism and he's an evolutionary. He claims to be an evolutionary scientist, but his degrees are in zoology and something else, which doesn't make any sense. So he's not really an expert on it. He just talks a lot. But this is what he says. A designer God cannot be used to explain organized complexity, because any God capable of designing anything would have to be complex enough to demand the same kind of explanation for his own right. What he's saying is, who created God? So if there is a creator who created all things, who created them? There are some religions, some faiths, some pseudo-Christian faiths that believe that there are multiple gods that have occurred over time. I think Mormonism is one of them, where there has been gods over time. Or was it Mormonism, or was it? Yeah, that's right. It was. Yeah. You can, if you do well enough. I teach a class in that too. Maybe if I'm still around, I'll do that with you guys, because I think it's important to kind of understand different religions, at least at a high level. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. And it's dizzying. Yes. So the logical argument basically says moving the goalposts. I'm going to remove the idea of a creator. So again, I'm playing soccer against you, right? All of you, and I'm the only one with a goal. So if I happen to hit a goal, I win, or even if I don't, I won't lose, because you don't have a goal to shoot into. I'm moving that goalpost. So in Nehemiah, we'll pick this up next time. I want to read these scripture portions because they're important. Bless you. There it is. So let's do a summary of teleological, then we'll end it for here today. Every design points to a designer. Life is too interconnected to be without an architect, right? The anthropic principle states universe has been precisely tweaked to support life. And I didn't include it in the lessons here, but I actually have sort of the idea of, maybe it's later. I didn't think I brought it in here. Sort of the idea of what the statistical probability of, if the Earth moved, X amount of feet to the left in its orbit, extra percentage of oxygen or less, either everything would catch on fire because oxygen is a accelerant for flame, or will asphyxiate if it was less. So the idea that the Earth was created in some way to support life, a very specific way. That's what anthropic principle means. And an irreducible complexity, any system of interacting parts that needs every part to function, We'll come back to this, and I realize, again, this is somewhat thick stuff. Baseline, I'm trying to give you a baseline of things, right, to understand, because you're going to hear these things from some of you going off into college or wherever you may go into the world. You're going to hear people talking about this stuff. You should be relatively familiar with some of these terms and these ideas to be able to at least have an idea. You may not remember what I said. You probably blinked out 20 minutes ago, but you, and that's okay. I'm not, it's just heavy stuff. I fall asleep writing it. But the idea is you need to have this idea, these thoughts, when you hear people say things. I remember what that was, and this is what this is. And so you have a point to have a defense, really what it all comes down to. All right, let's pray. Alex, pray us out quickly, please.
Father Lord, thank you, Lord, for this day, Lord. Thank you, Lord, for this time together. I pray that you would allow us to be able to leave here, Lord, knowing more about you, and be able to speak about your truth when